Okay, we're going to begin. Can everyone hear that? Fred, can you hear that? Yes. Okay, so my name's Gary Hall. This is Yannicka Adama. We're going to start our conference on radical open access. I did have a little bit of a panic just a minute ago because I was thinking we don't have anyone from the university to come here and tell you about how well we're doing and look at all the infrastructure outside. It's really fantastic. And I was going to buttonhole Sean Hydes to do it, who's the head of department, which is the space that we're in, but that would be too cruel. So we're not going to do that. We'll say a little bit about open access and radical open access, one particular interpretation of it, and then we'll give you the bit of the bureaucracy you need for the day, and then we'll get on with the conference. So we're going to kind of straight into the intellectual stuff. None of this faffing around. So, yeah, I suppose the good news for most of us is that open access at long last seems to have, finally, for those of us that have been doing it for quite a while, seems to have entered the mainstream, at least we should say in the global Western North. So you've got things like the European Commission has made open access the general principle for Horizon 2020, which is its new research and innovation funding program for leading up to 2020. In the US, you've got the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. It announced in 2013 that it was directing all federal agencies with a research budget of over $100 million to produce plans to make the results of their research accessible to the public within a year of publication. So that's kind of all the good news around open access. The not so good news, perhaps, is that it's a certain version of open access that's being taken up. You know, universal open access is currently being promoted by policymakers and funders and commercial publishers alike, primarily as a means of serving the knowledge economy and helping to stimulate market competition. And as we say in the conference abstract, that kind of version of open access becomes so dominant that even those who are on the left of the political spectrum who want to be critical of open access, they tend to present it in pretty much the same terms as merely assisting the ongoing process of privatizing knowledge and research in the university. And that kind of leaves many of us who see open access differently, who see it as a means of countering and affirmatively disrupting the increasing commercialization of knowledge and research through the development of different forms of scholarly production and publication. That leaves us with something of a decision to make. So do we work with the grain of neoliberalism's takeover of open access, as many are doing for a variety of reasons, not least of them, of course, and that way you get at least some possibility of having access to funding? Do we accept that despite whatever interesting potential it may once have had, open access, like open source and open education and open science, has today been pretty much co-opted by the neoliberal mainstream? And just give up on it as a concept and a practice and direct our time and attention elsewhere to what might be more profitable or productive or interesting things? Do we carry on doing what I suspect a lot of us have been doing anyway, which is working often cooperatively and collaboratively against the grain to publish open access journals, run open access presses, explore multimodal forms of scholarly communication, experiment with different ideas of the author and originality in the book and the university and so forth, and just operate more or less independently without much hope or need of either funding or support? Or do we accept that such domination and incorporation is to be expected? I mean, that's just what politics is. Do we therefore refuse to concede open access and instead struggle over its history and its meaning in an attempt to redefine and reclaim and repurpose it? And do we do so not least by emphasizing some of the different, more intellectually and politically exciting alternative ways of understanding open access that are currently available? What, for shorthand, we might call radical open access, even if we know that the term radical is not without its problems. I mean, does it confine us to too narrow an understanding of radicality, or to working within open access rather than entering new arenas? So these are just some of the questions that we're looking to discuss over the course of the next 2 days. Now, of course, given the title and makeup of this conference, you probably already can give a rough guess at where our sympathies lie. In fact, we've organised this event precisely to bring together a range of those who are interested in and often already experimenting with radical forms of open access. And we're kind of doing this together, so I'm handing over now.
All right. Yeah. So for our part, what we're calling radical open access is not a model to be implemented in different settings or kind of one-size-fits-all solution to a specific problem. For instance, how to achieve universal, free online access to research, for example. So if democracy for Etienne Balibar is a permanent struggle for democratization, so radical open access can be understood as a series of ongoing critical struggles, not least around issues of access, experimentation, and self-reflexivity. It is thus contingent and contextual, consisting of a heterogeneity of different groups, peoples, institutions, and projects, all with their own affordances and value systems, each inventing their own singular ways of responding to their community's needs. So we envision radical open access less as a homogeneous project with a fixed end goal, and more as a process of continuous critical self-reflection and resistance. However, because we want to open things up rather than close them down from the start, we're not going to say too much at this point about what radical open access is for us. We might, however, come back to say more about this toward the end of the conference. Instead, we see this event as providing us with an opportunity to both explore the diversity of exciting open access methods, models, and approaches that are currently available in the arts, humanities, and social sciences especially, and to discuss some of the possible futures for open access. So, in keeping with this approach, our arrangements of this conference has been informed by a sense of parity. So we don't have any keynotes, we only have panels, and we've done our best to give everyone more or less the same amount of time to speak. So we've tried to have a kind of democratic mix of early career scholars as well as established speakers, and we're making extensive use of Skype, so not to exclude anyone who, for whatever reason, couldn't travel or couldn't be here with us today. But this sense of parity and inclusion also extends to all of you as attendees, and we'll do our best to create a kind of atmosphere in which you'll feel able and indeed encouraged to contribute. So we've designed the panel so that there's plenty of time at the end for questions and comments. And we've made sure that there are decent breaks for coffee and lunch throughout the 2 days, as we know that's where the interesting things tend to happen. And our final panel has also been designed with the idea of giving everyone an opportunity to speak. So as part of the kind of closing remarks that we'll have on Tuesday, we thought we'd explore whether or not we want to form some sort of radical open access network or community out of this. So is this desirable or even possible to some extent? And if so, how might we go about it so that it actually works rather than just being something nice to say at the end of a conference? So we've asked Jonathan Gray from the Open Knowledge Foundation to say a few words and share his experiences on the subject to kick off this discussion, and also to help us out to respond to any issues raised during the conference. But other than that, we thought we'd leave this panel kind of open for your ideas and thoughts. So with apologies to David and Siggy who are on the program, the names that are attached to it are at the moment really just placeholders. So if you'd like to contribute to this final panel, regardless of whether you're one of our official speakers or whether you're here because you thought the conference looked kind of interesting, feel free at any point over the next 2 days to let myself or Gary know, and we can then either put you on this panel and give you some time to speak, or otherwise you can just make a comment or raise a suggestion. It's supposed to be quite an open panel. All right. Now for some practicalities, tea, coffee, and lunch will be upstairs, where you just went for registration. Toilets are to your right if you walk past the Media Loan Shop. The doors to go outside of the building function via card access, unfortunately, so be cautious of that when you go outside to get some air or to smoke, and we'll try to have people there all the time to let you in and out, but if they're not, feel free to tailgate. I'm not supposed to say that, but do it anyway. So you can find a schedule for today and tomorrow here, and it's also in your program booklet, and if you haven't got a booklet yet, they're also upstairs where we had tea and coffee. All right. So if you use Twitter, the hashtag for the conference is RadicalOA, and we're also experimentally streaming, and this is a first experiment for us, the conference via Periscope and Twitter. So do feel free to share the streaming link. It's on Twitter, and you should be able to find it via RadicalOA. Yeah, to anybody you think might be interested in following the conference as it unfolds today. So before we start off with the first panel, we would like to extend our gratitude to a few people and institutions that have made this conference possible. So this includes the Center for Disruptive Media, Coventry University School of Art and Design, Department of Media, and the Disruptive Media Learning Lab. But I also like to thank Sarah Carnagan-Andrews, Craig Goddard, Denise Demicolli, Josh Price, Sadie Kerr, Mark Dennis, Nanette Brock, Matthew Hawkins, Rebecca Koss, and Davina Bacta, and of course our speakers and the presses and projects they represent. But most of all, however, we would like to thank you for coming today and discussing these important issues with us.